Okay, so maybe there's not like an actual pirate, but track 18 is all about a storm. And let me tell you, this one kind of starts loud and heavy, and I really kind of like the vibe of this one, despite it being such a pain in the butt to get sounding right. So, here we go. Like I said, this track was a nightmare from a production standpoint, only because I was extremely tired. Ironically, the day before I wrote this, or the night before, I should say, it was pouring rain, and we had one of the biggest windstorms. There's literally limbs all over my yard right now that I've got to go get a chainsaw and chop down like they're big limbs, not like limbs, but like limbs. And I gotta get a chainsaw and chop them all up. And like it was just crazy windstorm, knocked the power out. Power was out from like 11 p.m. to like 6 a.m. or like 5 a.m. something like that. It was hot in our house, and I was tired. I was so tired trying to write this track. I had to work too, of course. Like, so I've been working on audio all day because that's what I do for a living, and then stopping from that to go work on this. And I was so frustrated, and like I had this idea in my head of what I wanted, but honestly, the whole time I was writing it, I kept going back and forth of like, is this even what I want? And I was struggling, and I was struggling, and at like 7 p.m., I finally get done writing it, and it's muddy. The mix is messed up. And I knew that, but I laid it down. I had all the tracks laid out. I had it basically mixed. It just wasn't mastered very well, I guess I should say. I laid it down. I came back to it around 8:30 and spent another 20 minutes or so getting it all cleaned up. And now I absolutely love it. I'm really proud of the way it turned out. And there's some really interesting elements in here, but I'm just going to let you hear that, and then we can talk about it afterward. I do want to give a very brief warning. Volume wise, it shouldn't hurt too bad, of course, because all these tracks are trying to be mastered to the same volume. But I will say this track starts very, very quickly. I'm trying to zoom in here so you can see what I mean. I mean, it hits with one of the loudest moments in the track right out of the gate. So just a warning, I'm about to hit this play button, and if your earphones are too loud, you may have a bit of a jump. So get ready for that lightning in 3, 2, 1. So let me set this one up thematically for you. We have the previous tracks, which is like setting sail all day on the ocean, coming to sunset, joy in your heart, all of that stuff. And then we come to maybe like the middle of the night where boom, you hear this thunder. I guess you don't hear lightning, you see lightning. But boom, thunder, loud, shakes the whole vessel. Rough seas, wind starts blowing in. All of that starts to kind of build into this climax that we're in right here on this ocean journey. And so a few of the elements we hear, I'm just kind of, let me sum this up first. Basically, this whole track is just us on this ship, enduring the waves and praying our boat doesn't get knocked to pieces and us get lost at sea. So, a couple of quick things to note about that. If you're listening with headphones, you may have noticed this. If you're not listening with headphones, you're really robbing yourself of the experience because I try to really incorporate stereo to its, I'm trying to push what I can at least know of stereo with this. So, this track especially, there's kind of this creaking sound, almost like wood, just this kind of sound where almost sounds like wood grinding or like a boat hull just kind of wrenching, I guess. And if you notice, so that the rain, the wind, all of that is actually throughout this entire track. It never goes away. It bogs down and comes back in certain areas to make room for the mix, which was a big problem when I was mixing it. So I was trying to mix it with that at the same volume the whole time. It was making the track muddy. I couldn't make the instruments pop, especially the drums were just getting lost. Um, so it gets softer and louder. It starts loud. There's a part in the middle where you can kind of hear the wind and stuff come in whenever the organ, there's like an organ sound that kind of gives it that creepy, eerie vibe. It drops out and there's just that sign bell kind of sound from track 11 that actually it's carryover that same instrument. It's just a little brighter in this track, but it kind of drops in and kind of carries the rhythm and like you can hear the wind pick back up and everything. But this rocking sound, I actually recorded it, or my wife and I actually recorded it. I had her hold it to a hinge on our bathroom door, which has a very deep, cracky, like crunchy sound to it right now because it needs some WD-40, like a lot of our doors around here apparently. Doors squeak. That's just what happens after time. But it had a really good sound. Actually, I was going into the room one night late, right before bed, and I opened the door and I heard it just start creaking, and I said, "That's what I need for this next track I'm going to work on." And I knew right then that I was going to use it for this track for this idea of the storm. So a couple of things about this. I didn't know if I was actually going to do a shipwreck or not. I had debated on actually having this be a shipwreck, but I struggled with it and it just didn't fit the narrative of the writing style for this track. And I'm trying to let the music carry this story forward, not my brain. So I went with just a really rough storm. Um, but like, oh, sorry, I keep getting distracted. That creaking noise actually pans hard left and hard right, back and forth in just a triangle pattern. So you'll hear it go left and right, like the rocking of the ocean throughout the whole track. The rain was from a huge storm, not the same storm that knocked down all the limbs. We've had a lot of really big rainstorms lately, but all of that was sampled. I literally put my phone on record and laid it on the front porch for like 6 minutes about last week, I think, sampling because I had an idea about doing a rain song, like a storm song for a while now. And so I threw it out on the porch and recorded all of that because a lot of these ambient tracks, like I said, I'm trying to record myself. I have another ambient track that's going to make its way, hopefully, into one of these future songs, but I don't want to spoil that one just yet because I don't know where that's going yet. I don't know how that's going to work in the story, but it's really cool. But yeah, so all the rain is actually sampled from my yard, literally just laying on the porch, recording that. The creaking, like I said, was the door. And then the wind. Normally, I record my own wind by blowing it in the microphone, but I wanted something that was a little more wispier. So I used one of Apple's loops because they have like 7 or 8 different wind loops because it was a little higher pitched and cut through the mix a little bit better. So I actually ended up going with that so I didn't have to try to fight with it forever. So that being said, there's like that sine bell, and which a sine bell is a type of synthesizer sound. For those who don't realize what I'm talking about, like I said, that's carried over from track 11. No, not track 11. I'm sorry. That's carried over from whichever track it was, maybe track 8 or 9. The one that's like dreaming of home whenever you're being carried from the gypsies. Whatever, it's back there. I think it's track 8 or 9. that's carried over from. And then the organ is a new instrument that worked its way in just for this because organs are creepy as heck, and it needed something creepy as heck. So that's kind of that. So we have Storm on the Ocean and Creaky Boat. And oh, another thing, like I said, this track was extremely hard for me to get going. For some reason, I kept messing up. Something just wasn't right. The drums are kind of, I mean, they're not super complex, at least to like in my head, they're not. But there's a lot of space in between a lot of the hi hat hits that just my brain wasn't wanting to do right in certain areas. So I had to work and work and work through the drums, and then of course mixing them was a process. And and then the biggest thing was originally that lead kind of, I mean, almost has a bit of a, I don't know, like a spy versus spy sound in a way, like kind of misty, like sneaky kind of feel, which attributes to the track name, uh, which to remind you is this storm comes like a pirate thief swiftly. And I wanted it to have that kind of feel to it, almost like the storm is a pirate, isn't a pirate. I mean, you get what I'm saying. So another random thing about this track is or this entire album actually, just like a little bit of a spoiler alert, thus far we have had no actual antagonist. The antagonist has always been a product of the environment our protagonist is in. And so it was the cave, and then it was the desert, and we thought it was the desert people, but it wasn't. They were actually good. And then the antagonist became trying to figure out what was next. Then the antagonist is now the storm. So I don't really want an enemy in this album. It's a story, but it's about the adventure. You know, I think of like open world games where you're wandering about and isn't anyone to fight. There isn't anything like that. It's just all very open and explorative, and everything's a product of the environment you're in, because this album is symbolic of spiritual growth and emotional growth and mental growth. And so I wanted it to represent that there wasn't a physical tangible enemy, but it was all product of the environment. That being said, I also like the idea of pirates, and this is very ocean, and ocean and pirates go together. I think of like Zelda, Wind Waker. I don't know why that keeps coming to my mind with this whole thing, but and I didn't want to incorporate actual pirates, but I wanted to kind of incorporate some of the elements of that. So the storm is kind of playing the role of a pirate. It's trying to rob our protagonist of his joy and his adventurous spirit he is finding in himself. So that being said, like I was saying, I was trying and trying with the mandolin. It would not work. I had the whole track recorded with mandolin and scrapped it, deleted it all. Cold turkey, went a different direction and used my acoustic guitar because it's a bit more round and less twangy, and kind of attributed a bit to that sound, that echoey vibe, through some reverb and some delay on there. And it was more rounded. The mandolin is good and sharp and rugged, but it wasn't cutting it for this track. I needed something more round. I realized that, and once I got the acoustic guitar laid down, everything started falling into place a whole lot better. But I've taken up enough of your time on this track. There's a lot of ground to cover, but if you haven't done so far, be sure to subscribe and let me know what you think about this track in the comment section below. Be sure to find me on other social platforms as well, and I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow for track 19 to see what happens after the storm.